Well, I'd like to start today by discussing the influence of planets on all people on planet Earth, and in actual fact all creatures on planet Earth as well. In my film Spirit World 2, The Alien Cabala, I reveal that some of the highest secrets of certain forms of magic are that each planet in our solar system consists of a particular type of intelligence. Now, this is difficult to understand at first until you really look at, say, for example, planet Earth, and you can see that there are literally trillions of different creatures living on our planet in a symbiotic relationship. And in addition to all of these insects, birds, there's literally trillions of life forms, we have the plant kingdom as well, and of course plants are alive. Now, when you look at the way that the atmosphere is recycled by the forests, when you look at the way that soil is created by leaf matter, and how different creatures such as worms in the earth actually process that leaf matter and turn it into soil, and then the soil in turn gives life to more plants. And then if you look at the symbiotic relationship between different sets of creatures on the planet, you can take a step back and look at this marvelous watery sphere that is traveling through space, and you can see the Earth as a giant, living, super intelligent organism. And of course, planet Earth is not the only planet of its type. There's bound to be, just through the laws of probability, there's bound to be many, many other planets. If we consider that every single planetary body, to a greater or lesser extent, is a whole symbiotic, intelligent system, then we can begin to understand the ancient teachings of magic, which we find really the origins of magic, I would say, come from Sumeria, in the area between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. This area is now known as Iraq. Previously it was the Sumerian kingdom and Babylonian kingdom. And the idea that planets are intelligent life forms, super living organisms, and therefore have their own spirit, dates from, we're going back thousands of years, way back before the pharaonic dynasties of Egypt, before the Druids of Europe. Now, in many magical traditions, most notably in the Cabala, which is the Hebrew system of formal ceremonial magic, we can see that certain magical traditions have given names to the spirits inside these planets. And it's not just planets, it's also stars, which are also referred to in magical systems as being intelligent bodies which have an intelligent logos, or an intelligent guiding system of intelligence behind these stars and planets. Now, it may sound very odd to somebody who's fresh to all of this information that major famous politicians throughout history, kings, queens, many great scientists, have all been secretly practicing various forms of magical ritual and invoking and summoning the spirits of stars and planets into a magical temple. Now, I know that if this is the first time you've come across that information, that sounds weird. And I'm not here to judge what George Bush, who's a member of the Skull and Bones secret society who hold rituals, does. I'm not here to, particularly cast a particularly investigative eye on, say, for example, Queen Elizabeth II, who is the grand patroness of world international Freemasonry, or, her ancestors, such as Queen Elizabeth I, who employed magicians such as John Dee. It sounds weird, it sounds crazy. Many people cast magical ritual out of hand as being unscientific. But the greatest scientific minds of recent generations, such as Sir Isaac Newton, took magic very, very seriously. In actual fact, magic is the root of all modern science. So in my film, the two planetary or celestial intelligences which I decide to concentrate on is the spirit of our sun, which is a star, and that is known to occultists as the black sun. That's the intelligence that's powering the actual physical sun. And in Eastern traditions, this intelligent life force inside our nearest star is called the solar logos. And also in my film Spirit World 2, I cover the Eastern name for the intelligence of planet Earth, which is called Sanat Kumara in the Eastern tradition of magic. Now, when you come to do a ritual, you have to sort of resign yourself to the fact that it's very rare that a spirit or a spiritual entity will manifest itself visually. In actual fact, most magical ritual is designed to open up the magician's mind and open up the minds of the people who are participating in the ritual. And really the magical element, the unseen magical element in all ritual is what goes on in the psychology of the actual magician. And visualization is a very, very important tool in magic. And there are many ancient books, especially books from the pre-medieval and medieval era, which contain illustrations of what certain spirits, including planetary and star spirits, look like. And I've got a list here, and I'd just like to go through this list of what the various spirits of the planets in our particular solar system should be visualized as in a magical ritual. I'll give you their Kabbalistic names as well, because the Cabala is a very powerful system of magic, and it's become popularized by people like Britney Spears and Madonna in recent times. Now, the sun. Let's take the sun as an example. In ancient Greece, it was known as Apollo. Its symbolic form, if it's being used in a magical ritual that's being written down on a piece of consecrated vellum, you can use a lion to represent the sun. And this was done in ancient Egypt sometimes. It can also be a sparrowhawk. Again, sparrowhawks and birds of prey play a very, very important role in the magical traditions of Egypt, Lebanon, Palestine. In actual fact, the Middle East is famous for being a breeding ground of various mystery schools or magical schools in the ancient world. Now, the sun in the Cabala is known as Sorath. And if you want to invoke the spirit of the sun, the solar logos, many magical texts recommend that you visualize the intelligent powerhouse, the intelligent force, the life force of the sun appearing inside the magical temple as a king holding a scepter, or it could be a roaring lion holding a scepter, or a roaring lion holding a cross. I'll give you another example. The planet Mercury. It's a very, very powerful planet, and anybody that's studied astrology knows that Mercury has a huge number of influences on human personality, and it's often associated with success in communications, success in public speaking, success in theatre, generally to do with communication, wealth. It has a great influence on personal wealth. Well, Mercury was worshipped in the ancient world, and it was known as Hermes. And the magician king, if you like, called Hermes of the ancient world, is one in the same as the spirit of Mercury. Now, Mercury is represented as, in magical terms, especially in ancient Egypt, as a bird, an ibis. And whenever you see depictions on walls of Egyptian temples which refer to Hermes, the so-called magician priest king of ancient Egypt, who is responsible for designing many of the great monuments of ancient Egypt, you'll see that Hermes has the body of a man but the head of an ibis bird. And I would just like to say at this point that many of these planetary spirits do use birds or reptilian creatures such as dragons to represent their intelligent life force. It's fascinating because archaeologists and anthropologists have now concluded that all of the birds which we see flying around in all the countries of the world, all the different types and varieties of birds, are actually direct descendants of dinosaurs. In other words, reptilian creatures that lived long, long ago on planet Earth. We can think of things like the Tyrannosaurus Rex, who's this ferocious reptilian monster. Didn't actually all die out in this, sort of dinosaur catastrophe. But in actual fact, many of the birds have direct evolution traits that allows us to trace back their roots, their genealogical roots, to certain dinosaurs. In actual fact, birds are reptiles. They are avian reptiles, and instead of having scales, the scales have developed and evolved over a long period of time and developed into feathers. It's interesting that many of these planetary spirits are represented by things like griffins and dragons, which are reptilian, obviously. But they're also represented by birds, such as the ibis in the case of the spirit of Mercury or the spirit of Hermes, which are one and the same thing. And these are also, these birds have a very strong connection with the reptilian paradigm. Now, there was a book published in the 1800s called The Celestial Intelligencer, and that is a sort of form of a grimoire. Grimoire is a magical textbook, and there are many grimoires, and many of them have their roots in Kabbalistic and pre-Kabbalistic traditions of magic from ancient Israel and Palestine. And the Celestial Intelligencer is a fascinating book. It was published, I think it was the first time in 1801. I might be a few years out on that one. And what's interesting is that it draws on lots of these ancient magical texts, and it describes how to pull down using the names of these planetary spirits, the Kabbalistic Hebrew names of these planetary intelligences, how to pull down and summon and invoke these celestial planetary spirits into the magic circle. And this is one of the fundamental roots of Western ceremonial magic. And, it's important to understand that it's not just in astrology that the planets have enormous influence, and stars have certain influences as well, but it's actually something that is a root of all magical tradition.
Miles de documentales en inglés, español